met with federal health officials to discuss the possible need for a COVID-19 booster shot.
Yeah, the meeting, it comes days after the company said that it is starting to see waning immunity from its 2-dose vaccine, which is why it's looking to get a booster dose authorized.
Right, but here's where the confusion comes in. That same day, the FDA, CDC, and the NIH all released a joint statement saying that if you're fully vaccinated, getting a booster shot is not necessary. The agencies say they are prepared if and when the science demonstrates that they're needed. Now, as we've seen more than once throughout this pandemic, medical minds have varying opinions on the need for a booster right now. So we'd like to welcome in Dr. Keyur Vyas, an associate professor of medicine in the Internal Medicine Division of Infectious Disease at the University of Arkansas. Thank you for joining us, Doctor. We have quite a few questions for you, as you can imagine.
Yeah, all surrounding the Delta variant and the COVID vaccines, and of course needing a booster shot as well. Now, first, most scientists and doctors agree that a booster will be needed at some point, and it's often even kind of compared to like a flu shot, how you get one every year. But now the Delta variant seems to have a lot of people concerned that they need it sooner than later. What is the current information we know about the variant and how all current vaccines hold up against it, whether it be one of the 2-shot vaccines or a 1-shot vaccine like Johnson & Johnson?
Well, thank you for having me. And the good news is that with the Delta variant, that our current vaccines that are available in the U.S., either the Pfizer and Moderna mRNA vaccines or the Johnson & Johnson 1-shot vaccine, do seem to still have very good efficacy against the Delta variant. There's data out of the United Kingdom for the Pfizer vaccine that it's maintaining 80+% efficacy against people developing severe disease and over 95% efficacy against people having to end up in the hospital. So the vaccines continue to help prevent people from becoming significantly ill from COVID and from ending up in the hospital. And that's borne out with what we are seeing with unvaccinated individuals being the ones that are really bearing the brunt and getting very sick from the Delta variant as it's coming through our communities.
Doctor, over the weekend, Dr. Fauci explained to CNN why the CDC and the FDA and Pfizer appear to have different views, at least on the urgency of fully vaccinated people needing a booster right now. Let's listen to what he says.
And I think what people need to understand, and it's really important to understand that when you have an organization like the CDC and the FDA that are responsible for the regulatory components of what we do, as well as the public health, when they make a formal recommendation, it has to be based on data that's evidence that proves we need to go in this direction. Before you get that data, there will always be people, well-meaning people and well-meaning companies will say, the way we look at the situation, it looks like you might need a booster, so let's go ahead and give a booster. But that's not a formal recommendation.
So, Doctor, a non-medical mind to your medical mind, I'm going to tell you what I heard him say, that there isn't necessarily a disagreement between the government and health agencies and Pfizer, but they require more data before sending us all into a booster frenzy, meaning the CDC and FDA. So is that how you would evaluate the difference in messaging that we're hearing that has caused kind of a confusion?
Right. It can be confusing, especially, not knowing the inner workings of how these decisions are made. But what we practice in medicine is really looking at the evidence, what we call evidence-based medicine. We look to see when immunity is waning for individuals. And so if we think about the individuals that were part of the original studies for Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson that led to these vaccines getting emergency use approval or authorization, those individuals, they're about, some of them are close to a year out. They're a little bit ahead of when we first started vaccinating healthcare workers and the public. And so those studies are still ongoing. They're still looking at those individuals to determine, are they still protected? Are they getting sick with COVID? What are their antibody responses doing? And so as we gather that information, we learn more. Originally, when the vaccines were first authorized, we knew that they seemed to have good efficacy for at least 3 months. When we hit that 3-month mark, we knew that they had good efficacy for at least 6 months. And so as we go forward, we're evaluating this data in real time. what we know is that there are some individuals that don't mount an immune response to the same degree as people with normal immune systems. These may be individuals with cancer or autoimmune diseases, or they may be individuals that have had transplants or are on certain medicines. Now, those populations, there may be a need for additional doses. There are small studies that have looked at that, and it seems like some of these individuals potentially may benefit. But that's a whole lot different than recommending that the whole population get a third dose. And so the data there is still evolving. And Dr. Fauci is correct that just because the best evidence we have right now is that people are protected, that they don't necessarily need an additional booster dose, doesn't mean that as that data is gathered in real time, that we will not adapt to the new information that comes along. That's the nature of science and medicine, is that we are not rigid. We follow the data as we gather it. And as it becomes apparent that we need another booster, then I'm confident that recommendation will come out. Right now, what we need to do as a country is focus on getting first shots into those individuals that have not gotten any vaccine, as well as making sure that people that have gotten their first shot, if they need a second shot of that vaccine, that they get that. It's very apparent that for our level of protection, especially against the Delta variant, that individuals need to be fully immunized. So if it's the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, they need to get both doses.
Well, here's something that's actually really interesting. We were talking about this in our meeting today. There are individuals who may have gotten the Johnson & Johnson shot. Some then think maybe they need to go get one of the mRNA vaccines like the Pfizer or Moderna. Is there any risk in doing something like that?
At this point, we don't know. That has not been studied, or at least come out in the data that's available. There may be groups that are looking at that, whether a vaccine that is based on an adenovirus vector, like either the Johnson & Johnson or the AstraZeneca. If we mix vaccines, first question is it safe? And second is it effective? Does it provide additional protection? And there are groups that are looking at that, but we don't have the data available right now to say that is something that should be done. We do have evidence that even with one shot of Johnson & Johnson, it does seem that that still continues to provide protection against the Delta variant as well.
Yeah, and if I can quickly ask you, Doctor, to wrap up here, if you were on the president's strategy team for public health and you had to decide what was a bigger priority right now, if it was getting the unvaccinated vaccinated or trying to get data together on boosters, which would you say is the biggest priority that collectively benefits as many people as possible right now?
It is getting people that are not vaccinated, getting them vaccinated with first doses and making sure that they get their second dose if that is the vaccine that they're receiving. The benefit we know of being fully vaccinated with either one dose Johnson & Johnson or two dose Pfizer and Moderna is definitely there. We as a scientific and medical community study all of these things concurrently. But right now, that is what we need to do in order to bring this pandemic to an end, is to get as many people that are eligible for vaccination, get them protected.
Yeah. Dr. Vyas, thank you so much for coming here, helping us clear all of this up. We appreciate you for that and your expertise.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah. Now, the FDA